For Luke, the story of Jesus begins with the nature of story itself. So that's how he starts off his book, talking about how this story came about and what that means for us. And what he kind of sets up for us right at the beginning of the book is basically this question: what if? What if? What if the story happens to be true? You see, Luke, he understood something about human nature and human beings, and that's that we are story-formed people. We're a story-formed people. Every single one of us, every single person here in this room has a story. You've got a story that's wrapped up in your identity. You've got a background and a home and a particular family life that you grew up in. Each one of us has had defining moments that you can think of and remember that were critical junctures in your life that it ended up forming and shaping the unique person that you are and have become. See, we're a story-formed people. And that's why we love story. We love stories, don't we? It's why we love a good movie that's got a good story to it that pulls us in. It's why we like a good book, especially one that's just a page turner, a really well put together story. Stories, they matter. They matter a lot. I watched a couple TED Talks this week on story, and one of the ones I watched was from this guy, J.J. Abrams. He's this guy you probably have never heard of, made some movies that nobody's ever seen, like Star Wars: Force Awakens and Star Trek, Mission Impossible, Lost. Never heard of them, I'm sure, because you don't watch TV or movies, right? That's sin. Yeah. So anyway, he's the guy that wrote and directed those, and in his TED Talk, he said some very interesting things. He said, what a story does, a good story, is that it addresses some mystery. That there's some mystery that you can't help but want to be solved. And he said that it's really more than just getting to the end of the story and finding out who done it. He said that the best stories, they tap into something about who we are as human nature, and they draw something out of us that gets into our own person and identity. And he says that the best stories, they bring us to this realization of what he said, some deep truth that creates wonder and delight in us, that we become part of the answer to the story. We're involved in it. It kind of struck me, because that's sort of what Luke does at the beginning of his book in these first few verses. It's an introduction or a dedication of sorts, but it's one that kind of subtly provokes this question: what if? What if? What if there really is a God? And what if this God actually did something in human history, something incredible? And what if this Jesus guy, what if he really is God's man and did something so that people could become friends with God? What if? What if? For me, personally, this has been a really important question in my life. About 21 years ago, when I was 18 and I was a freshman in college, I was at one of those critical life-forming stages in my life. And at the beginning of college, mostly I was just surfing all the time and chasing girls and going to class sometimes. But there was this undercurrent question where I was trying to figure out who I was and what my purpose in life was, what I was going to do with my life, and what I believed. Now, I've always been a big reader. I always loved reading and still read lots of books and all kinds of books. But that year, someone gave me a book and introduced me to this guy named Anselm from the 11th century, this book titled Proslogion, and I read it. And in the beginning, it has this prayer that had a pretty profound effect on me that I wanted to read for you today. He writes this, and this is part of his introduction, basically, for making an argument for why God exists. He writes this prayer and says, "Let me find you in loving you. Let me love you in finding you. I acknowledge, Lord, and I give thanks that you created your image in me so that I remember you, think of you, and love you. But this image, it's so effaced and worn away by vice, so darkened by the smoke of sin that it cannot do what it was made to do unless you renew and reform it. I do not try Lord, to obtain your lofty heights because my understanding is in no way equal to it, but I do desire to understand your truth a little, the truth that my heart believes and loves. For I do not seek to understand so that I may believe, but I believe so that I may understand or know. That last line of that prayer, to believe in order to know, that was really one of the things that put me over the edge in becoming a Christian. That there was truth to be had, though I might not know and understand everything about God, that I could know enough, and that it would be sufficient, and that God, it would open up and show me a wonderful God that I could actually trust. That line, I believe, in order to know, it hit me so hard that I happened to be in Seattle, where it rains all the time, so they're kind of used to this, you know. I was there, and it was a rainy night, and I walked into a tattoo parlor, and I kind of grew up being taught that tattoos were of the devil, and so when I walked into this tattoo parlor, everybody there, they were covered in tattoos with devils, so that seemed about right. But I went ahead and decided to get my very first tattoo on my arm, I believe, in order to know. But I got it in Latin because that's what Anselm originally wrote it in, and Latin just sounds sexy. Credo ut intelligam. Who doesn't that sound smart? So I got that. That was my first tattoo. Now I'm covered in them and whatnot. I don't get them as much these days now that I have to pay for 3 children instead of tattoos, but I like tattoos. I got those words tattooed on me because those words were really part of the thing that really changed the whole course and direction of my life. Now all of my life since becoming a Christian has become about knowing God, knowing and understanding him in the person and work of Jesus.